I never got a chance to watch the first two Expendables movie, and I feel like I really missed out because I kept hearing so many good things about it. Not that it was a masterpiece of a film, but the fact that it was just so much fun and just a breath of fresh air to see something as classic as 80s action stars just coming in, blowing shit up, and saying one-liners. But because I didn't watch the first two, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to compare this third one with the other two. You know, was it worse? Is it better? Is it just more of the same? However, story-wise, it was fine because I didn't feel like the first two movies had anything to do with the third one. So as a standalone film, this was great. This was all right. I can understand. I can follow what's going on, at least story-wise. Character-wise, throughout the film, they were trying to do this whole 80s action stars versus modern day action stars, and see which one is better. And at first it shows, the 80s action stars doing their thing, just charge right in, blow stuff up, and just complete the mission. And then when it finally gets to the modern day characters, they show, their careful planning, the tech savvy. They're careful. They don't really let them know they're there until it's already too late. They're like ninjas. So it was fun. I got to see like both action genres just battling it out and see which one is better. But then as the film went on, it just showed that the younger modern, the modern action stars were less experienced and didn't have enough time on missions to actually bond and actually get to know each other and discover each other's weaknesses so they can balance each other out. And that's when they get in trouble, and the old action stars need to come in and save the day. So on that fact alone, it makes sense because when we get first introduced to these new characters, they really don't seem to be all that well-rounded. They're just new blood. They have the potential, but they don't really have the time to apply or learn how to apply these skills they've learned into actual combat. One of them is, I feel like they never introduced her very well, the female character. They show her as a bouncer for a club. And even when they're describing that she has some sort of military background, the fact that she's just a bouncer worries me. It's like, wait, why are we enlisting a bouncer to take down this huge organization? In fact, near the end of the film, the villain actually sends an entire army. I mean, a literal army with tanks and warheads. Just like, holy shit. What kind of team do you need to take this kind of threat down? And they're going around getting the guy who's, a hacker, which is good. He's good at his job. He does help them a lot. A bouncer, a military man who's seen, he seems to have this wider array of knowledge about weaponry. And that's all well and good, but they don't really show much about his combat experience. The only modern day action hero that introduced here that seems to have any sense of skill, really, his leader material, has a problem with following orders, but then that's it. He keeps asking questions, but it doesn't really involve any conflict with the other soldiers, with any of the other Expendables. So it's just like, here's the new blood, new traits. We're done. No need for any more development on their part. Although I will say the older generation is fantastic. In fact, their strong bonds throughout this film was nice to me. I like seeing them all hanging out, just drinking beers, cracking wise jokes at each other. And yes, the one-liners do get like overzealous. It's just everywhere, and everyone's repeating it a couple times. It's like, yeah. If I get getting tired of it, and I really didn't really grow up too much with their movies. If even I can get tired of that, yeah, people who do know them and know their movies well are gonna get really sick of it really quickly. But it's still, it's still the 80s action stars, rubbing shoulders with each other. It's like, yeah. It's like, okay. Antonio Banderas, though, he's my favorite character by far. He has just so much energy. He's having fun. He's just overly eccentric, and it looks like he's less excited about the actual, storyline missions, like, and more excited about actually being part of this movie. And that's where one of the those are the parts that I'm just sitting there like, nah, this is what I'm talking about. This is where I'm having fun. This is what the movie should be, just having me have fun with these characters. Mel Gibson is a great villain too. He's not as overly eccentric as I thought he would be, but he's still quirky enough that when I see him, he's like, okay, I can get some bad guy vibes from him, especially the whole buying art even though he doesn't like it aspect. Is like, what is that about? But it's still like, oh, I have money, I need to spend it on something, why not art? And tell all these stories about art. Is like, okay, that's his thing, whatever, as long as he's threatening. And he is threatening. He's okay, here's a big spoiler. He's a former expendable, but apparently because of a botched mission, the government, betraying them, killing off some of the Expendables, he betrays everyone and goes off to be an arms dealer. Yeah, that whole backstory of his is cliche. The government betrayed me, so I'm gonna destroy everyone else. At least, he never really goes after the actual government that betrayed him. He's just like off to go kill random people in other nations. Okay, Mel Gibson, you go do that. But he is threatening. He is a major threat to the heroes, especially the more modern day. He captures them, tortures them. It's like, oh, okay. Now that brings me to the whole PG-13 rated R thing about this movie. Again, like I said, I never watched the first two, and I believe those were rated R, and that's probably one of the reasons why it was so much fun for everyone to watch. And seeing this as PG-13, I can see where they make some cuts, especially when they're killing some of the random soldiers. They immediately cut to different scenes, really quickly, boom, 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 boom. And it's like, well, what happened? So they can get rid of the blood. They filmed it with the blood and the CGI, and then near the last minute, they decided PG-13 and just cut those 2 or 3 seconds of blood spewing out, and then it just made it feel completely messed up and just constant looking back and forth, my eyes are dizzy and nauseous. And that's not even the worst of it, because it gets really bad near the end with a very long and dragged on battle sequence. When everyone's trapped in a building that's covered in C4, and then this army is sent after them, tanks, and literally hundreds and hundreds of soldiers versus 10, I guess, soldiers. About 10, I believe it's 10. And it just goes on and on and on, and it just constant just noise, and it's chaotic in a way that's, I can't really tell what's going on most of the time. And in fact, I can't even tell what some of the characters are doing. I could swear that 4 or 5 times they go back to this guy climbing this ventilation shaft, and that's all it is. It's just him climbing the ventilation shaft, reminding us, hey, he's still doing that. It's okay, I mean, you could literally and there's no sense of suspense for him. He's is he gonna fall? Is he hanging on to dear breath and someone from the very top saves him? No, he just finally gets to the top. Okay, I didn't really need to see that. Then another guy who's good at riding a bike, he's riding the bike, and at first I didn't know who that was, but the camera was following him. It was who is he? Who is he? And then finally around the 3rd time, I figure out oh, that's one of the other young bloods. It's okay, I didn't really realize that. And just it's constant noise too. Some of the times I couldn't hear what any of them were saying, because it was just so loud and just constant blowing everything up and gunfire, and they were trying to say something, probably more one-liners, I don't know, and I couldn't really hear anything. Now, whether or not we needed to hear what they were saying, again, that's up to if you actually knew what they were saying. But because I couldn't hear, I can't say what they say was important or not. Now, the plot point where why this new team is being introduced. I can see it being rushed. I can see it. I can see, it makes sense why they would do this. Why they would introduce a new team and trying to have them show off their skills and compare it to the old team and their old ways. But the way they introduced them felt kind of rushed and really nonsensical. I guess in one way, Stallone not wanting to risk his brothers, any more of his brothers at least, on this dangerous mission and taking down Mel Gibson. He was willing to let's get these young nobodies who are willing to risk their lives just because they're crazy. And if they die, I won't feel that bad. But if my brothers die, who have been with me for so many years and have probably more battle experience than these youngsters, die, I won't be able to take it. It's like, now again, I don't know if this is out of character for him or if it's in character. Like, he would care so much about his brothers that he would actually get them out of the action. But yeah, it just felt like we already know that's not gonna happen. They're gonna come back in, so there's really no point to actually kicking them out. It could have been more like the CIA hired two teams. The old team, they felt like the old team couldn't handle it. It's like, you failed your first attempt to capture Mel Gibson. We're gonna send this new team. The new team, while they do have some skills, couldn't match up to Mel Gibson's just immense force. His military. And so the old team has to come in and save the young people, and then they team up at the end. That could have been fine. It would have been cliche in some sense, but it would have still been a lot better than, get away, old team, new team, you suck, old team come back, boom. It's like, yeah, we didn't really need to waste the time of, getting rid of the old team. We really didn't. Although I will say, the action, while just everywhere and chaotic, and sometimes not even in a very good way, it was fine. Hell, there was CG when there wasn't supposed to be, like a CG parachute. Did they really put a CG parachute in there? It makes no sense. The concept is fine. Again, old versus new. It makes sense why they would try this in the third movie. Or at least maybe they could have tried it in the second movie. I don't know. I don't know what the second movie was about, if it was any better than the first. But it's a good concept to introduce. But really, I feel like they didn't do it as well as they could have. But yeah, again, like I said, this could have been rated R, and there probably wouldn't be that much difference to what happened in the movie. It would have been just blood. That's pretty much all that probably would have been added into the movie, just blood spurts. Probably CG blood, but that's about it. I mean, there's no other reason to cut out a couple scenes just to make a PG-13. But yeah, if I had to rate this movie, it's not god awful, because I wasn't like sitting there in disgust. And like I said, there are some good characters, and mainly Antonio Banderas, full of energy, just having so much fun. Mel Gibson, having so much fun being the villain again, as always in these action movies. And those parts, I just felt like, okay, yeah, I can see where this movie could have been great. What they did right. But everything else was just dragging it down, and it just felt like it could have been better. So at the end of the day, I'd have to give it a meh. That kind of thing, like, it's fine, but like I said, I don't know if it's better or worse than the first two. Maybe not. But as a standalone film, as just the first Expendables movie I've ever watched, it's fine. I can't really hate it, but I can't really love it either. It's just there. Just another action movie I'm probably going to forget about maybe a month or two. Either way. Yeah, I'm Tony Dragon. And bye-bye.